And boom, we're live. And yes, it's true. We have Percy Harvin. Welcome back to the Turn on the Jets podcast. We're going to spend all podcast talking about Percy Harvin and Jeremy Kerley's new contract, so we don't have to talk about the Jets' 1-6 record and completely gut-wrenching 27-25 loss to the New England Patriots, which I got to tell you, I mean, this season has that feel where they just can't find a way to win a close game. And while it was exciting watching them drive back, it was such a gut punch when that kick got blocked because I really felt just the way folks been kicking this year that he was going to make that kick if it got off, and we were going to get out of there with potentially this huge win that could maybe turn some momentum around. Blocked. And it always hurts to lose to New England like that. And then obviously there wasn't even really time to kind of absorb the loss because the next day, less than 24 hours later, they just traded for Percy Harvin. I'm rambling too much. Let's walk through everybody. We got the full house tonight. Dalbin Osorio, how you doing right now? Quick, how you feeling about that loss to the Pats? How you feeling about Percy? How you feeling about Kerley? Real quick.
The loss hurt. Excited about Percy. Really excited about Jeremy Kerley because I know when and we'll talk about this more in depth when the trade for Percy went down. I know a lot of people were saying that it means the end of Jeremy Kerley. So I'm really excited that they actually kept him, and they kept him for under market value, which I was really impressed with. So it's been a better week than the end of last week, that's for sure.
Connor Rogers also in the building. Will be in the building here at Wisdom Sports tomorrow, drawing up some X's and O's so we can explain what Rex has been doing good, what he's been doing poorly, how he's been forced to adjust, and then offensively, what the Jets kind of normally do with their personnel, and hopefully how Percy Harvin can help. Connor, how you doing tonight? How you feeling?
Good. Definitely good.
Then finally, we got ESPN Zone among 5 or 6 other places. Cole,
that's right.
Taking a little time out of his day to talk Jets with us. Cole, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, fellas. I'm doing good. It was a better week than last week.
This is true. It's true. It's a good way to look at it. Let's start with the Pats game, and this game feels like it was 6 weeks ago already, but it wasn't long ago. And we will have our kind of passing game breakdown and our secondary breakdown, normal stuff, kind of rolling out tomorrow before we get into more heavy preview of Jets Bills. But I guess let's just start kind of talking about how the Jets played in this game. I mean, they ran the ball down the Patriots' throat. Geno Smith probably played what I would say was his best game of the season. No turnovers, had a great drive late to, nearly tie the game up, but then missed a throw in the 2-point conversion. Still not a flawless performance. He missed that throw in the conversion, but definitely a step in the right direction. Defensively, really, you never want to put something on one guy, but Antonio Allen was really the individual direct victim of 2 huge Patriots touchdowns in this game, one on 3rd and 19 and one early in the game. Just frustrating to see a guy who was making progress last year do plays like that. And anytime you lose to the Pats, it's frustrating. I thought the Jets played well. I thought they were very game. I thought they probably outplayed New England, but it didn't matter because they couldn't find a way to win. And when you lose 6 games in a row, it's very easy to forget to find a way to win. And that's something Jet fans should remember as we go into what is an easier part of the schedule, but you're 1-6. There's no easy games, and you haven't won in a really long time. So thinking they're just going to kind of stroll in and beat a 4-3 Buffalo team might be a little unreasonable. But the last 6 have been very tough. 25-11 is the combined record of those teams. The next 6 will be nowhere near as hard, but we'll see if the Jets can get some momentum and kind of a streak going. Dog, what were your main kind of thoughts or observations from the game last Thursday?
I think Chris Ivory ran the ball really well. I thought he probably had his best game of the season. I thought Chris Johnson had his best game of the season too. And Johnson's somebody who we had kind of been really hard on him just in terms of he hadn't brought what I guess most people expected. And I mean, Joe, I think you and I argued with a bunch of people over the summer when they signed him. A lot of people thought that he was going to be Chris Johnson like he was in Tennessee. And we all argued that Chris Ivory was the better running back and he should have been the guy getting the most of the carries. So it was good to see that. But Johnson was really, really effective in a spellback role, and he ran hard. He ran north-south. He didn't dance a lot. So that jumped out at me. Geno, I agree with you, was his best game of the season, and probably his best game since the end of last year, because I know he played okay in Oakland, but he did have the turnover on the Woodson interception. I thought Geno played well. I thought the offensive line played well, other than Brick, who got abused by Chandler Jones. But I think it was a positive performance. I know there are no moral victories when you're 1-6, but I was very impressed with how they came to play because a lot of people thought the Patriots were going to steamroll them and they didn't. And so that's a credit to Rex getting them up. Now he has to get them up for this Sunday's game after a 10-11 day layoff.
Connor, what were you most impressed with? Give me just kind of one guy or one positional group on each side of the ball that you were most impressed with or encouraged by on Thursday night.
I would definitely have to say Calvin Pryor's best game by a long shot. He hung pretty well when he played cover one, just deep coverage in general. He was always in position. One specific play, Brady saw him, pick up the receiver running the vertical, and he purposely threw the ball. He overthrew the receiver and out of bounds because Pryor was the nearest guy to it. So I would definitely say Calvin Pryor. Obviously Chris Ivory, but we know what he is. A lot of people don't, though. So when it's a national appearance, you like to see a guy like that go off. I mean, he's one of the, if not the hardest runner in the league right now, and a huge reason why the Jets can run the ball when they stick to it. And I think Percy Harvin just opens that up even more. So those are my two guys from Thursday night.
Cole, what did you think of the Jets' performance on Thursday, particularly, offensively, what you saw from, Geno Smith, Eric Decker, and Dalvin touched on it a little bit before, Chris Johnson as well. It was also probably his best game of the year. Finally ran hard and broke some tackles and got north and south.
Yeah, I think all around it was probably one of the better offensive performances we've seen this year. Geno Smith, clearly his best game of the season, definitely the best since Oakland. Eric Decker got involved, and Chris Ivory was obviously running with the head of steam. Those are all the obvious things, but some stuff that stood out to me is I was going over the tape for my tight end preview, and the blocking in this game, the run blocking was exceptionally good. Ode Abushi in his first start of the season looked pretty good, to the point where you could possibly expect him to be a long-term option at the position. And Jason Morrow and Jeff Cumberland both made positive impacts in the running game, which is pretty rare. Usually at least one of them is making big whips on every other play. They held their own. They got a lot of push in the run game, and it was just an impressive all-around performance from.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely some things to build on out of Thursday, but again, it's obviously frustrating to see these in loss after loss after loss, and the Jets basically went through what everyone kind of considered the gauntlet of their schedule, 0-6, and I think they needed to kind of get out of these 7 games at 3-4 and kind of leave themselves in a spot to have a chance to fight the rest of the year, and they didn't do that. They lost a lot of close games. They were up 21-3 against Green Bay. They blew that lead. They were, after Geno Smith's interception on the second play of the game against Chicago, they probably outplayed them the whole game, but wasn't enough. Lost a winnable game to Detroit, no-showed to San Diego, lost on a last-second field goal with New England, and kind of here we are at 1-6, and this trade for Percy Harvin has kind of shot a little life back into the season, I guess is the best way to look at it, and maybe provides more of a clear evaluation of Geno Smith and Rex Ryan over the final stretch of this season where the competition will get a little softer. Dalbin, what was your initial reaction to the Harvin trade, and what do you think we're going to see on this Jets offense?
My initial reaction was I thought Jay Glazer's Twitter account was hacked. I didn't think that it was real, because this isn't baseball or basketball where you see a lot of activity around the trade deadline. So to see, we're 2 weeks away from the trade deadline now, or about a week away from the trade deadline. So to see a name like Percy Harvin, who's a very good player, I would say top 20, top 25 wide receiver in the NFL easily, get traded from a team that just had given up 3 picks and paid him a bunch of money. And then I think we all anticipated that smear campaign would come out after. But still, it didn't shake the shock. So I was impressed by Idzik for keeping it under wraps. Apparently, they had been talking for about a week or so, so I thought it was a good move by him to give up a conditional 6th-rounder that can become a 4th. I think that's exceptional for one of the better players in the league. I think you're going to – and I touched on this on Twitter earlier. I think, and with Kerley especially back in the fold, a lot of people expect Kerley to stay in the slot. I think you're going to see a lot of Percy Harvin in the slot, too, where you can get him against linebackers and safeties. Because, yes, he can win outside. He can win on the outside. So can Kerley. And Harvin on a linebacker is much more of a mismatch than Kerley on a linebacker, especially if you're going to try to stretch the field vertically. So I think you're going to see something that you haven't seen from the Jets offense in about 3 years, and that's the ability to stretch the field, because we know Decker can go get it. Harvin's going to go get it too. And now it makes Kerley's job easier and the running game's job easier. You're not going to be able to put eight in the box with these three receivers out there, and you're not going to be able to play cover two or play all the DBs back with Chris Ivory and Chris Johnson running the way they are.
Connor, could you talk through how it's going to benefit some of the different members of the Jets offense, just having Harvin out there, not even when he's making plays and hopefully catching passes and making defenders miss. How does his presence positively impact or have a trickle-down effect to the other members of the Jets offense?
Well, it's just another guy that teams have to game plan around. I mean, for whatever reason, Seattle wasn't featuring him in their offense this year. I personally think Darrell Bevell is one of the most overrated coordinators in football right now. If you can't find a way to get the ball in that guy's hands, you shouldn't be coaching in the NFL. And the best way to really sum it up is when you look back at 2010, what Marty Mornhinweg did with Deshaun Jackson when Michael Vick had one of his best years at quarterback ever. I think he'll use Percy in similar ways. Obviously, he's not the same kind of threat down the field as Deshaun Jackson. Sweep, bubble screens. I mean, they love throwing screens to Decker right now. You could put them on opposite sides, and it's just going to open up the running game. When you have a guy running downfield like that, it kind of takes the attention of a safety away, and it gets Ivory into the second level. Jason Morrow and Jeremy Kerley in the middle of the field should have plenty of room because, like I said, if teams want to play cover one right now against the Jets, that's how aggressive they've been and don't respect Geno Smith. If you try that right now and Percy Harvin runs down the field, that safety is taken out, and then it opens up the entire middle of the field. If you trust your linebackers against Jeremy Kerley, Jason Morrow, Chris Johnson, Bilal Powell, Eric Decker in the middle of the field, that's just not going to work anymore. And Geno Smith has to recognize those open targets. It's not David Nelson running in the middle of the field anymore. And Chris Johnson down. He hasn't been that effective, especially as a pass catcher. But, yeah, it's going to open up pretty much for everyone. And the most underrated factor is that it's going to open up the drag route for Greg Salas, who was doing really well with it anyway in weeks, I believe, 3 and 4. He had a couple of big yards after the catch plays, and you're going to see a lot more of that when he's healthy.
Cole, what do you think about kind of the compensation, what the Jets have to give up for Harvin, and how his contract kind of breaks out? Basically, the Jets are going to have kind of a 9-game evaluation period for him with no guaranteed money owed after this season. What do you think about what they're paying for him this year, and what do you think the odds are that he's kind of brought back here long term, to grow alongside Decker, Kerley, and Morrow?
I think in the end there are very few negatives to this deal. We don't know what the conditions are that would elevate the pick from a 6th all the way to, I think the highest I heard was a 4th. But you have to imagine it might have something to do with number of receptions, or it might have something to do with the Jets' success on the season, what have you. So you have to imagine that it's not going to get much higher than the 6 or maybe a 5 at best, based on where the Jets are now in the season, and how long it will take for Harvin to eventually get acclimated to the offense. So he probably won't be making any of those reception benchmarks if that's what the deal is based on. So in the end, you're giving up, as we saw this year, a pick that really isn't worth that much, despite Idzik's draft mantra. And, in the end, if you're getting a player who's a game breaker for 9 games, for 6th-round pick money for, minimal cost to the cap that you can just cut him after the season, I don't see why not. There is something to be said that it'll help to have Harvin, Johnson, Ivory have this, serious skill position group going on, and it'll help in your evaluation of Geno. That being said, I don't think 9 games with a pretty raw together group is going to be enough to actually evaluate him, but it'll show you something, hopefully by the end of the season, which is what I think a lot of this has to do with. I think Idzik actually outwardly said that he brought Harvin in as a method of evaluating Geno Smith for the remainder of the season. I think that was a direct quote from him at some point in this process.
Yeah, I think that is definitely a big part of it and something that makes sense. I think we've seen consistency from Geno. I think kind of removing another layer of potential excuses by giving him a playmaker like Harvin and really kind of giving him every chance to succeed, basically. Makes sense. And real quick before we kind of flip the page to Buffalo, Jets extended Jeremy Kerley today, 4 years, $16 million, $5.4 million guaranteed. A nice move because the Jets are going to really have a chance to grow their pass catchers together between Morrow and Kerley, and obviously potentially with Harvin if he plays well the next 9 games. It's a nice pass catching group to be able to kind of groom and grow up together. The Jets really haven't had any continuity, at the receiver and tight end position over the past few years. Really a spot where it is ideal and important to have that. So Curley's a guy who's been, kind of consistently productive here. A lot of people are kind of falling victim to a little recency bias that he didn't play well the last 4 games or wasn't involved the last 4 games, and are weighing those 4 games more than the previous 38 games he played for the Jets. That's when he was probably their most consistent receiver over that 2.5-year stretch, including a 830-yard receiving year with Sanchez and McElroy throwing in the ball. So Curley can play and get open at this level. I mean, he's a homegrown, talent. He was a draft pick. Obviously, you want to keep those guys in-house. So encouraging to see that move, guys. Real quick thoughts on Curley, and then we'll quickly flip it to the Bills game before we wrap it up. Dalbin, thoughts on Curley's contract?
I thought it was a good move. I'm curious and even now just thinking about the timing, because we can argue that his last really good game was against the Bears, and after that he kind of either threw by design or whatever the case may be, teams keying on him, he hadn't really played that well. I wonder if they had been negotiating and the contract was kind of weighing on his mind. I just thinking about the timing, so I wonder about that. But I do think it's a good deal. The Jets now have their top 4 pass catchers, and again, I'm assuming that Percy Harvin's going to be here next year. So they have their top 4 pass catchers all under the ages of 27 to grow with their young quarterback. And the Jets got a lot of flack for what they did to Mark Sanchez by getting rid of Cotchery and Braylon and replacing them with Plax and Mason. And so I think that it's interesting that this is almost the anti-Tannenbaum approach. And nobody will ever confuse Itzik for Tannenbaum, but I like the move. I think you keep these guys. They're all signed theoretically for the next 3 seasons after this, 3-4 seasons, and you find out what you have with your quarterback. I think it's a win. I think it's a very good move.
Connor, what did you think of the value on Curley's contract? 4 years, $16 million, $5.4 million guaranteed.
I thought it was extremely fair, and I don't think you're going to do better than that in free agency for that level, that tier of players. He's maybe 3rd-tier wide receiver type in a free agency class, and you're just not going to top that kind of deal. Those guys get overpaid. You look at Golden Tate. He's making over $6 million a year right now. Yeah, he's having a great season, but we're not talking about the elite players like an A.J. Green, and you can imagine if Demaryius Thomas or Des Bryant or Randall Cobb do see the free agent market, what they're going to be paid this year. And with the salary cap expected to make a really big jump this year, that agent would have and probably got more money in the offseason than when they did it now. So the Jets did it at the right time for a 25-year-old receiver. That skill set is not going to decline anytime soon. His game is not based off vertical speed. A lot of short routes, good hands. It was a really good move.
Cole, your thoughts on having Curley around for another few years?
I think it's definitely a good idea. You want to build chemistry between a receiver and a quarterback, and I think this is the best way to do it, keep continuity in the core. Hopefully you can pair Decker and Kerley for the next few years and pans out. I think Connor was touching on this, that we don't know the actual breakdown of the deal yet, but it's going to average out to somewhere around $4 million a year, which for a 3rd-tier receiver, even on in this free agent market, it's pretty good. Because as he said, these kind of players tend to get overpaid, even though he's a Jet. And you could look at it to let him have a chance to lock up a team player like that, and somebody that already has chemistry with the crack of your future. It's good to just get it done, dress, and save it for another day.
All right, before we wrap up, let's just real quick touch on the Jets-Bills matchup this weekend. Jets at home against Buffalo, 4-3, coming off a last-second win over the Minnesota Vikings. Lost C.J. Spiller to injury, lost Fred Jackson to injury. We're down to Anthony Dixon and Bryce Brown at running back. Not too shabby for your 3rd and 4th running back, to be fair. And Buffalo, strong defensive front, a little shaky in the secondary. Obviously, sounds familiar to Jet fans. Morton has been, competent as a starter since he's taken over. He, led them to that last-second win against Detroit. Obviously, did it last week against a fairly below-average Minnesota team, but has been pretty good since taking over. Sammy Watkins has been kind of all that everybody expected him to be at this level, which will be a tough matchup for the Jets secondary. Jets are 3-point favorites, which doesn't shock me. They played really well against Buffalo under Rex for what that's worth. And I just feel like, 10 days coming home to play Buffalo, you played Brady, Manning, Rivers, Rogers, all these past few weeks, and now you're playing Kyle Orton, who's, I don't know, the 18th or 19th best starting quarterback in the league when you were just playing maybe numbers, 2 through 5, if not 1 through 5. It's a nice step down, back to earth for the defense, and it's a game that, again, it feels silly to ever say that you think a 1-6 team should win a game because they need to show they know how to win a game. But if the Jets go out on a 10-day break after this trade, go back home and lose to a Buffalo team that's probably going to be 7-9, 6-10 this year, unless a couple different things break their way. We could be in for a really, really, really ugly second half, and it's going to be really hard to make an argument to bring Rex Ryan back if he's going to go out and over these last 9 go, 3-6 or 2-7. Despite frequently criticizing Rex, I've said time and time again, if this team finishes 5-4 or 6-3, he's probably coming back next year. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I don't know if it's the right call or not yet. Let's see how everyone develops the rest of the season. But the Jets need to win this game. If you look at their next 3 before the bye week, it's Buffalo at home, at Kansas City, home against Pittsburgh. I would say that this is probably the easiest of those 3 games. Debatable if you want to say Pittsburgh may be easier at home, but that'll basically be like an away game for the Jets. We know how Steelers fans travel to MetLife. And playing at Kansas City is never easy. And they're pretty good. They just knocked off the Chargers last week. Have impressive wins this season. So the thought that the next 3 games are some kind of cakewalk for the Jets is obviously misplaced, but they need to find a way to win a game. They need to find a way to win this game. There should be some energy in the stadium because of the Harvin deal. I think, Gino's been building up the last couple of weeks, and, hopefully he goes out and plays well. Dalvin, what are your expectations for Sunday?
I feel very confident about it. I think the Jets are going to win. They do tend to play well against the Bills. My only concern, and this isn't the official bye, and I tweeted this stat out earlier, the Jets are 1-4 under Rex Ryan after byes, and I know this isn't the official bye, but all 4 losses are by an average of 11 points. So Rex has a tendency to come out and lay eggs after long breaks, in-season breaks, not necessarily, from end of season to the beginning of a new season. But I think the Jets have had 2 fairly good performances. Like, they played Denver as well as you can probably expect. I think Denver's the best team in the NFL, and then they bounced back and played New England very well. They should win on Sunday, and it sounds kind of foolish or whatever. The only thing that it's a division game. Buffalo's going to be up for it, but Kyle Orton is not Aaron Rodgers, Brady, or Manning, or any of these guys that the Jets have played. So the Jets should win on Sunday if they have any designs of trying to make a playoff run in the second half.
Connor, your thoughts about the Bills matchup on Sunday and your expectations?
Yeah, sometimes Rex's preparation, they lay an egg. It'd be really disappointing if that's what they do here because they play the Bills really well at home year after year. They've had 10 days to prepare. They've had Harvin on the team throughout this preparation. I think they come out and win 21-10. Kyle Orton's been really surprising so far, but I can't see him doing well against the pressure that the Jets force, and I'm not sold on the Bills' offensive line. This one's on Gino. That's the bottom line because that front 7 of Buffalo is a top 3 unit in the league right now, and they're going to get there, especially against guys like Ibushi and Cologne inside. And, if they don't leave a back end to protect and guys can't get separation and Gino is just missing, it's not going to be good for the Jets. This is a classic what can you do for us, Geno Smith game, but I think they get it done.
Cole, thoughts for us Sunday and a prediction?
I would caution Jets fans to think of this as an easy win, and I know it's kind of silly to think of it this way given that they're 1-6, but this could almost be considered a trap game. You're coming off that, 6-game stretch that everybody's been talking about since the schedule was released, that they're going against all these elite to Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and they're finally off the schneid and they can pull out a win here. And as all 3 of you guys said, the Jets tend to come out kind of and lay an egg after long breaks under Rex, and I think there's probably legitimate concern that given the amount of time that has passed and given the schedule they've just got off, they could be looking at an upset here. I I think overall the team is more talented. The Jets are more talented than the Bills, I mean. And they have been putting together more complete games, especially the past 2 weeks against New England and against Denver. I'm going to say it's a 14-10 game. It's sloppy, and it's not going to be as easy as everybody thinks.
Yeah, I mean, I see the Jets 3-point favorites. It feels like a fair line to me. I think they will probably win a pretty close game. I can see a 24-20 type situation. And like Connor said, Jets just need Geno Smith to play well. They need him to make a couple plays with his legs like he did against New England. They need to get Harvin involved. They need to continue to try to run the football with Chris Ivory and Chris Johnson and just not turn the football over. And I think they'll be fine. I think they'll find a way to get a win. Does that mean it's going to propel some big winning streak? I don't know, because playing in Kansas City is tough, but it'll be nice to get a home win, get a division win, get a win after the Harvin trade. And I think the Jets will find a way to probably pull it out. And again, it's a 1-6 team, and I'm talking about them probably winning, which feels insane. But this is a team that's probably a little better than their 1-6 record, and probably closer, or if not the same, if not a slightly better team than Buffalo right now. So we'll see what happens. Guys, appreciate you taking the time tonight. And we're trucking through on a 1-6 team getting these podcasts done. We'll be filming the X and O's tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have that out a few days after. We got to leave that up to the wonderful production and editing crew here at Whistle Sports. Me and Connor are just the on-screen talent.
Yeah.
And we'll have all our normal analysis the next 3 or 4 days leading up to the Buffalo game. Normal kind of film breakdown. So we're going to have the passing one out tomorrow. And all these guys here will keep trucking away with all their great content as well. Thanks for listening, and we will be talking to you next week, hopefully after a win. Just give us one win to talk about in a long time. All right, good night, guys.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
You're welcome.